And so, we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy, in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story about choosing to be still, choosing to be confined, a story about building your own quiet, unloving world, and then locking the door from the outside, a story about the holy women who were walled alive for God. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this quiet space we're building together, you're welcome to leave a soft tap on the like button, or perhaps even subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a gentle footprint in the dust. Before we seal the door and begin our journey inward, and if you feel so inclined, you can leave a quiet comment, letting me know the city or town you're listening from, and what time it is for you now. It's a lovely thought, isn't it? All of us, in different corners of the world, settling into the same quiet darkness together. All right. Let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint, steady sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. The idea doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It doesn't come with a choir of angels or a blinding light. It comes as a quiet whisper, a thought that plants itself in your mind while you're redoing something utterly ordinary. Perhaps you are mending a tunic, the ruffles scratching at your fingertips. Or maybe you are walking through the muddy lane of your village. The smell of damp earth and wood smoke thick in the air. You see the stone church, solid and eternal, and the thought arrives. Stillness. What would it be like to be that still? Right now, your life is anything but. It is a world of noise, of obligation, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of the market, the cries of children, the endless demands of a family or a feudal lord. Your life, as a woman in the 13th century, is not entirely your own. It is a path largely chosen for you. Marriage, childbirth, labor, and then, if you're lucky, a quiet fading into old age. But you've heard the stories of the holy women, the chosen few, the anchoress. The word itself sounds strange and important. You learn later that it comes from a much older Greek word, anachoreo, which simply means to withdraw, to retreat. It's not about being a nun in a bustling convent, surrounded by sisters. No, this is something else entirely, something more absolute. The whisper in your mind grows a little louder. It speaks of a life of pure devotion. A life where the only voice you need to listen to is God's. A life contained within four stone walls, attached to the side of the very church you're looking at now. A tiny room, a cell, your anchor hold, a place to be anchored to God, and to nothing else. Of course, at this stage, it's all very romantic, isn't it? A holy stillness, a direct line to the divine. You imagine a serene existence of prayer and contemplation, your soul soaring while your body remains peacefully still. You picture yourself as a conduit for grace, a spiritual beacon for the village that you have left behind. They would come to your window, the one that faces the outside world, and ask for your prayers. They would see you as something more than a woman. They would see you as holy. Historians, of course, still debate the true motivations for such a radical choice. For some women, it was undoubtedly a calling of pure, unshakable faith. But for others, well, in a world that offers women so few paths to autonomy, becoming an anchoress was a strange and extreme form of liberation. It was a way to escape an unwanted marriage. It was a way to dedicate your life to scholarship and reading. As many anchoresses were literate, a rare privilege. It was a way to have a room of one's own. Even if that room was, for all intents and purposes, a tomb. In your cell, no man could command you. No husband, no father, no lord. Your only authority would be the bishop, and God himself. It's a powerful thought. But the whisper doesn't talk about power or escape. It talks about peace. It shows you a vision of a life stripped of all earthly distraction, No more worrying about the harvest, or the price of wool, or the sickness that's creeping through the village. Just you, the stones, and the presence of the divine. The thought is terrifying, to be walled in, to never again walk in a field, feel the rain on your face, or see the full expanse of the sky, to be buried alive, but with the small inconvenience of having to keep breathing, to choose to rot, slowly and piously, in a box, but beneath the terror, there is a pull, a strange, sweet melody that the rest of the world is too loud to hear. And so, you find yourself lingering by the churchyard more often. You trace the outline of the cold stones with your fingers, imagining a small room built against the north wall, the quietest, darkest side. You look at the people around you, living their loud, messy, complicated lives, and you feel a sense of detachment. The whisper is no longer a whisper. It has become a quiet, steady hum in the center of your being. The choice is crystallizing in your mind. You will leave the world. You will ask to be anchored. You will make your body a prison, to set your soul free. The first step, is the most difficult. You must convince the world, and specifically one very important man, that you are not mad. It's one thing to have a secret, holy ambition humming in your soul. It's quite another to say it out loud. To speak it into the world is to make it real, and to make it real is to subject it to judgment. And the judgment of one man, in particular, is all that matters. You can't just hire a mason and wall yourself in. This isn't a private hobby. This is a formal, public, and irreversible act sanctioned by the church, so you must seek the approval of your bishop. This is not a simple task. The bishop is a powerful, busy man, overseeing a vast diocese. He is a prince of the church, more concerned with politics, land disputes, and clerical discipline than with the spiritual aspirations of one more anonymous woman in his flock. Getting an audience requires persistence. You appeal to your local priest, who is likely skeptical. He has known you since you were a child. He has seen you laugh, and gossip, and maybe even curse when you stubbed your toe. The idea of you as a living saint, a holy oracle sealed in stone, seems improbable. He probably thinks it's a phase. But you are resolute. Your quiet certainty is unsettling, and eventually, he relents, passing your request up the chain of command. Weeks, maybe months, pills. And then, one day, a summons arrives, not from the bishop himself, not yet. You will be examined by one of his deputies, an old deacon perhaps, a man whose job is to filter out the unworthy, the unstable, and the simply inconvenient. The day of the examination feels like a trial. You are ushered into a chamber in a stone priory, a room that is cold even in summer. The air smells of old parchment, beeswax, and damp wool. The archdeacon sits behind a heavy oak table. He is not unkind, but his eyes are weary and appraising. He has done this before. He has listened to fervent declarations on dramatic pronouncements, and he has sent most of them away with a prescription for prayer and a good meal. His questions begin simply. He asks about your life, your family. He is trying to map the contours of your world, looking for the source of this unusual desire. Are you fleeing a cruel father, escaping a betrothal you dread? Are you overcome with grief for a lost child or husband? Yes, in a way. A medieval psychologist and historians still argue about what these examinations were truly for. Were they legitimate spiritual assessments? Or were they primarily designed to protect the church's reputation, to weed out anyone who might crack under the strain and bring scandal upon the institution that walled her in? Then he tests your faith. He asks you to recite psalms, to explain points of doctrine, to speak on the lives of the saints. He needs to know that your piety is not shallow. This is not a life for the lukewarm. You must have the spiritual fortitude to withstand decades of solitude with only prayer as your shield. You answer his questions calmly, the words flowing from that quiet, humming place inside you. And then comes the most important question of all. It is not about God, it is about money. This is the unglamorous, often unspoken truth of the anchorite life. It was not a vow of poverty, not in the same way as a friar. To be sealed away, you had to be able to afford it. You needed a patron, a wealthy benefactor, or your own inheritance. You had to prove that you had the financial means to pay for your own food, your firewood, your clothing, and, crucially, the wages for the 1 or 2 servants who would attend you for the rest of your life. The church was not offering a divine retirement plan. They were authorizing a very specific, very permanent, and very expensive form of spiritual quarantine. Your examiner needs to see the documents, the pledges, the proof of funds. Here's, essentially, running a credit check on your soul. This is also where a strange, unspoken bias often comes into play. They preferred widows. A young, unmarried woman was a risk. Her mind might still be full of worldly temptations. She might regret her choice, cry out to be released. But a widow had seen the world. She had known a man, run a household, perhaps raised children. She was seen as more stable, less prone to flights of fancy. She had tasted what the world had to offer and had consciously, naturally, rejected it. If you are a widow, you can feel the outlook and relax slightly. You are a much better investment. You sit there, on your hard bench, as he scrutinizes you. You are a specimen. Your faith, your sanity, your finances, all laid bare on his table. He is looking for any crack, any weakness that suggests you are not fit for this, fit to be entombed. It's a strange sort of job interview, when you think about it. The primary qualification is a demonstrable ability to endure extreme, lifelong solitude without going mad or broke. Finally, he leans back. The questioning is over. The room falls into a heavy silence, broken only by the distant sound of a choir practicing. He looks at you for a long time, and you meet his gaze. You do not plead. You do not weep. You simply wait. You have offered him your truth. He makes a note on a piece of parchment, the scratch of the quill loud in the still air. He tells you the bishop will be informed of his recommendation. He does not tell you what that recommendation is. He simply dismisses you. You walk out of the cold room and back into the sunlit world, a world you have just taken one step closer to leaving forever. The waiting that follows is a new kind of torment. Before, the choice was yours alone. Now, it is out of your hands. You have passed your interview. You have been deemed sane enough, holy enough, and, most importantly, wealthy enough to be sealed in a stone box until you die. When the letter finally arrives, bearing the bishop's seal, you feel a lurch in your stomach. It is a feeling that is not quite joy, and not quite fear, but a profound and terrifying sense of finality. Permission has been granted. The path is now clear. Permission. The word echoes in the new silence of your mind. For so long, your desire was a secret garden, a private, theoretical landscape. Now, a gate has been unlocked by a man in a distant city, a man you have never even met. The theory is about to become stone and mortar, and with that reality comes a new, chilling awareness. Everything you do now, you are doing for the last time. The news spreads through your small community like fire in dry grass. You are no longer just you, the woman they knew. You are becoming a symbol, a holy spectacle. The villagers look at you differently, some with awe, as if you are already shimmering with a saintly glow, others with a kind of morbid curiosity, the way people might stare at a condemned prisoner. They are trying to see the answer to a question they can't quite articulate. Why? But you don't have time for their questions. You have your own checklist of goodbyes. The approval from the bishop comes with a time frame. The ritual, your entombment, will be set. You have a few weeks, perhaps a month, to put your worldly affairs in order and sever every last tie. You begin to walk through your life as if you are a ghost, already haunting the places you once inhabited. You visit your family, This is the hardest part. How do you explain this to a mother, a father, a sister, to them? This is not a holy calling. It is a death. You are choosing to leave them while you are still breathing. You are inflicting a living bereavement upon them. The conversations are stilted and painful. They might weep. They might argue. They might simply stare at you, their eyes filled with a grief you cannot soothe. You try to speak of God's will, of a higher purpose, but your words sound thin and hollow in the face of their raw, human love. You are choosing an abstract devotion over their tangible embrace. There is no easy way to say that. Then there is the matter of your possessions. You must divest yourself of everything, the few coins you have, the simple wooden furniture, the clothes you wear. Your will must be drawn up, every last detail accounted for. Some of your wealth is already set aside for your lifelong upkeep, but the rest must be given away. You are performing the death of your worldly identity. It's a strange and liberating process. The pot you've cooked in for years, it no longer belongs to you. The cloak that has kept you warm through so many winters, you will not need it where you are going. Each object you release is another thread cut. Historians note that for many anchoresses, this period was a flurry of legal and financial activity, a stark contrast to the spiritual life they were about to embrace. It highlights the deeply practical nature of this supposedly ethereal calling. You weren't just floating off to heaven. You were executing a complex estate plan. One afternoon, you find yourself walking out of the village, past the last of the houses. You walk until the sounds of life fade behind you, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the song of a distant bird. You find a field, one you have known your whole life, and you lie down in the grass. This is what you will miss. Not the people, with their noise and their demands. Not the things, with their weight and their worry. But this, the feeling of the living earth beneath you. You press your palms flat against the ground, feeling the cool dampness of the soil. You watch a beetle making its slow, determined way up a blade of grass. You stare up at the sky, a vast, endlessly shifting canvas of blue and white. This is your lost sky. In your cell, you will have a window, but it will only ever show you a sliver of the world, a prescribed, framed, unchanging view of a churchyard wall or a patch of graveyard. You will never again see the horizon. You will never again feel the full, unrestrained warmth of the sun on your face. You close your eyes and try to memorize it all. The scent of the wildflowers, the feeling of a gentle breeze on your skin, the sheer, overwhelming sense of space. It's a sensory feast. And you are a starving person taking your last meal. You know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that this memory will have to sustain you for 30, 40, maybe 50 years of darkness and stone. There's a curious detail that some historical accounts mention. The Serene Wis, a 13th century guide for anchoresses, specifically warns against keeping any animal except a cat. It's a practical rule. But as you lie in this field, you understand the deeper reason. A dog would pine for the fields. A bird would beat itself against the walls, desperate for the sky. A cat knows how to live in a small space. It understands the art of confinement. It is the perfect, and only, acceptable companion for a life lived in a box. As the sun begins to set, casting long, golden shadows across the landscape, a profound sadness washes over you. Not regret, not doubt, but a deep, mournful ache for the simple, profound beauty of the world you are about to renounce. This is your last sunset. You watch as the fiery orb sinks below the hills, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink and purple. It is a spectacle of unbearable beauty. You stay there until the last of the light has bled from the sky, and the first stars begin to prick the deep velvet of the night. It is cold now, but you don't move. This is the end of your freedom. From this moment on, your world will shrink until it is no bigger than your own body. You get up slowly, your limbs stiff. You do not look back. You walk towards the village, towards the church. towards the small stone room that is waiting to become your entire world, and your tomb. The sound begins a few days later. A rhythmic, grating scrape. A sharp chink of metal on stone. It's the sound of your future being built. You don't have to see it to know what it is. The masons have arrived. Following the bishop's approval, a location for your cell, your anchor hold, was formally selected. It's almost always on the north side of the church. This was a deliberate choice, layered with symbolism. The north side was considered the coldest, the darkest, the side associated with evil spirits and the devil. By placing your cell there, you were positioning yourself as a spiritual warrior, a holy guard standing watch at the church's most vulnerable flank, a permanent, prayer-fueled bulwark against the forces of darkness. Of course, there were practical reasons too. The north side received the least sunlight, making it damp and cold, which was considered suitably austere for a life of penance. It was also often adjacent to the churchyard, the cemetery. Your life of living death would be spent right next to the actual dead. It's a bit on the nose, really, a constant, earthy reminder of your own mortality. You find yourself drawn to the sound, even though you know you shouldn't watch. You stand at a distance, perhaps partially hidden behind a tree, and you see them. Two men, their faces smudged with dust, their hands calloused. They are methodically, almost casually, constructing your prison. They lay the foundation, a simple stone rectangle against the thick, ancient wall of the church. They mix the mortar, a gritty, rich slap of a sound. To them, this is just another job. They might be building a new wall for a farmer one day, a chimney for the baker the next, and today, a box for a holy woman. You watch as the walls begin to rise, stone by stone. It's a slow, inexorable process. You see the space taking shape, and it's smaller than you imagined, so much smaller. From a distance, it looks less like a room and more like a large stone cabinet, a pantry for a soul. You try to picture yourself inside, and a wave of claustrophobia, cold and sharp, washes over you. You push it down. This is your choice. This is your holy calling. Inside that small space, the masons are embedding your entire world. They are building a small, simple stone altar, so you can have your own private prayers. They are constructing a small hearth and a chimney, not for cooking, but for a tiny fire to keep you from freezing solid in the winter months. And most importantly, they are leaving 3 small openings, 3 carefully planned holes in your stone cocoon. The first, and most important, is the squint. This is a narrow, diagonal slit cut through the church wall itself. It's not a window, it's a carefully angled channel. It will allow you to see a small, specific portion of the main church altar inside. Through this slit, you can witness the Mass, hear the choir, and receive the Eucharist, which will be passed to you on a long-handled spoon. You will be part of the church, but not in it, a perpetual observer, forever separated by stone. The second opening is your link to the world you've left behind. It's a small, shuttered window in the outer wall, facing the village or the churchyard. This is where your servants will pass you food and water, and take away your waste. It's also where the villagers will come to speak with you. They will not see you. You will be a voice in the shadows, a disembodied presence. This window is your lifeline and your stage. And the third opening, that's the odd one. It's a small, practical detail that historians still find a little strange. It was a hole, often covered by a cloth, specifically for your cat to come and go. It's a fascinating contradiction. You will be sealed in place, permanently, but your cat gets a door. It's a small concession to companionship and, more practically, to vermin control. A cat was a living mousetrap, essential for protecting your meager food supplies. You watch the masons work, and you begin to understand that this is not just construction, it is a craft. They must make the cell strong enough to last a lifetime, secure enough that you cannot get out, and that no one can get in. The final part of their work will be to brick up the doorway after you have entered. There will be no handle on your side, no lock to be picked, just a solid wall of stone and mortar. There's a debate among scholars about the exact dimensions of these cells. Surviving examples vary, but they were all incredibly small. Some might have been as little as 12 feet by 12 feet, a space you could cross in a few steps, and this would be your universe, for walking, for sleeping, for praying, for everything. Your mind tries to grasp the reality of it. Decades, in a space the size of a large closet. One of the masons sees you watching. He doesn't smile. He just gives you a slow, solemn nod. There's a pity in his eyes that makes you angry. He doesn't understand. He sees a cage. You see a sanctuary. He sees a tomb. You see a doorway to God. At least, that's what you tell yourself. As the day ends, the masons pack up their tools. The walls are now waist high. A stone skeleton waiting for its soul. You walk over to it after they've gone. In the twilight, you step over the low wall and stand inside the footprint of your future. You stretch your arms out wide. Your fingertips can almost touch the planed walls on either side. Message it. This will be your world. The air is already colder inside these half-finished walls. You look up at the darkening sky, the same sky you stared at from the field. It already seems distant, framed by the rising stones. The quiet hum in your soul is still there, but now it's joined by a low, anxious thrum. It's the sound of the inevitable, the sound of the stones, waiting. The day arrives, as all days do, with the rising of the sun, but this sunrise feels different. It feels like a final curtain. This is the day of your enclosure, the day of your living funeral. You are not allowed to simply walk into your new home and have the door shut behind you. No, that would be far too simple, too private. This is a public ceremony, a piece of religious theater, and you are the star. The entire village, and perhaps people from neighboring towns who have heard the news, will be there to watch. You are dressed simply, but you are not in mourning clothes. You are a bride of Christ. You are led to the church, and the service begins. It is not the celebratory mass of a wedding. However, it is the mass for the dead. The missa pro defunctis. The bishop, or his designated representative, stands at the altar, and the Latin prayers that fill the air are the same ones they will sing for you when you are actually, physically, dead. They are praying for the repose of your soul. Your soul, which is, at the moment, still very much attached to your living, breathing, terrified body. It's a profoundly surreal experience. You are attending your own funeral. You kneel there, listening to them commend your spirit to God, as if you've already departed. You are being ritually and legally declared dead to the world. This practice, historical sources confirm, was essential by declaring you dead. The church severed all your worldly contracts and obligations. Your family could inherit your property. Your husband, if you had one and he was still alive, would be declared a widower, free to remarry. You were, in the eyes of the law and the community, a ghost, a holy ghost, perhaps, but a ghost nonetheless. It's a strange and unsettling thought. You must die before you can begin your new life. After the Mass, a procession forms. The priest, holding a cross, leads the way. You follow, and behind you, the entire congregation. They are singing solemn hymns, a sound echoing off the stone walls of the church. The procession moves slowly out of the main church and towards your newly built cell on the north side. The door stands open. The door, waiting mouth. You can feel the eyes of the crowd on you. You try to keep your face serene, impassive, a mask of holy calm. Inside, your heart is a trapped bird, beating frantically against your ribs. This is the point of no return. You are walking towards your own grave. At the entrance to the cell, the bishop anoints you with holy oil. He makes the sign of the cross on your forehead. Your hands, your feet, it is the same rite as extreme unction. the last rites given to the dying. He is preparing you for your death, or rather, your life and death. He then leads you inside. You cross the threshold. For a moment, you stand there in the small, dark space. It smells of fresh water, damp earth, and something else. Finality. You turn and look back out the doorway. You see a sea of faces, pale and upturned in the daylight. You might see your mother, her face streaked with tears. You might see your sister, holding her hand over her mouth. You catch a final glimpse of the sky, a heartbreaking beautiful patch of blue. Then the bishop steps back, and the masons step forward. They do not look at you. They have their tools, their mortar, their stones, and they begin their work. The sound is sickeningly final. The scrape of the trowel wheel, the wet slap of mortar, the solid, dull thud of a stone being set in place. One by one, they fill the doorway. With each stone, your world shrinks. The sliver of sky disappears. The sea of faces is gone. The light from the outside world is methodically, inexorably, bricked out. It's a point of debate among historians whether the anchoress was expected to watch this, or to turn her back and face the altar in her cell. Some accounts suggest she would be on her knees, already deep in prayer, as the final seal was made. Others imply a more stark, face-to-face confrontation with her entombment. The choice, perhaps, is yours. Do you watch the last of your old life vanish, or do you turn towards the first moment of your new one? Let's say you watch. You watch as the light becomes a line, then a sliver, then a pinprick. The sounds from outside become muffled, distant. The last stone is maneuvered into place. There's a flurry of scraping and tapping as the mason fills the final gaps with mortar, making it airtight, night-tight, and permanent. Then, silence. Not the quiet of an empty room. This is a profound, deep, and absolute silence. The silence of the tomb. The masons are gathering their tools. The crowd is dispersing, their morbid curiosity satisfied. The priest is leading the last of the prayers outside your wall. But you can't hear them clearly anymore. It's all just a low, indistinct murmur, the sound of a world that no longer includes you. You are alone. You are sealed. The funeral is over. You are officially dead. Now, all you have to do is live the rest of your life. The silence that follows the mason's final scrape is unlike any quiet you have ever known. It's not just an absence of sound. It's a presence. It has weight. It presses in on you from all sides. A thick, smothering blanket. The low murmur from the crowd outside fades completely, and you are left with nothing but the ringing in your own ears. You stand frozen in the center of your cell, your eyes struggling to adjust to the profound darkness. The only light is a faint, ghostly luminescence filtering through the two small openings. The squint into the church and the shuttered window to the outside. It's not enough to see by. It's just enough to create shadows that writhe and twist in the corners of your vision. Your first instinct is to scream, to beat your fists against the newly laid stones of the doorway, to cry out that there has been a mistake, that you've changed your mind. The urge is a physical thing, a hurt, frantic pressure in your chest. But you don't. The training, the prayers, the sheer, crushing finality of the act holds you in place. Screaming would do nothing. There is no one to let you out. There is no longer out. So you breathe. You force yourself to take one slow, shuddering breath, and then another. The air is cold and thick with the smell of damp stone and a faint, cloying scent of the holy oil on your skin. You can hear the sound of your own breathing, loud and dragged in the stillness. You can hear the frantic, thumping rhythm of your own heart. For the first few minutes, those are the only sounds in the universe. This immediate, shocking plunge into sensory deprivation is something modern science has studied extensively. In chambers designed to replicate this kind of isolation, people report hallucinations, paranoia, and a distorted sense of time within hours. You have just signed up for a lifetime subscription. Historians often focus on the piety and the rules, but they sometimes fail to capture the sheer, brutal, psychological shock of this first moment, the sudden severing of almost all sensory input. You take a tentative step, your hands outstretched, and your fingers immediately brush against a cold, rough wool. You recoil, a small gasp escaping your lips. The world has shrunk to the length of your arm. The sheer, physical reality of your confinement is no longer an idea. It's a fact, communicated to you by the stone against your skin. You know, intellectually, that you are not completely cut off. You know about the squint and the food hatch. But in this first hour, that knowledge is useless. You feel utterly, primordial lie alone, a single soul adrift in a tiny, stone-lined sea of darkness. You might sink to your knees, the rough spun wool of your habits creeping against the stone floor. Perhaps you try to pray. It's what you're supposed to do. It's the entire point of this exercise. But the words catch in your throat. Your mind is a frantic storm of panic and regret. The serene, contemplative life you imagine seems like a cruel joke. This isn't peace. This is terror. There's a strange, little-known phenomenon that some anchoress reportedly experienced. Something scholars call the temptation of the first night. The belief was that the devil, furious at losing a soul to such piety, would throw his most potent terrifying tricks at the newly enclosed anchorite. He would fill the silence with phantom whispers. He would make the shadows dance into the shapes of horrifying beasts. He would amplify every doubt, every fear, turning her own mind into her worst enemy. Whether it was the devil or simply the predictable psychological response to being buried alive is, of course, a matter of fierce debate. But for you, in this moment, the distinction is meaningless. You feel a presence in the cell with you, a cold, mocking intelligence. You squeeze your eyes shut, but the darkness behind your eyelids is no different from the darkness in the room. There is no escape. You begin to tremble. A deep, uncontrollable shaking that starts in your core and spreads to your limbs. This is the moment of truth, not the ceremony, not the bishop's blessing, but this, alone in the dark, with the silence and the fear. Can you endure this for a single night? Can you endure it for 50 years? And then, through the thick curtain of your panic, a sound. It's faint, but it's there. A low, familiar chant. It's coming from the other side of the wall, through the squint. Vespers. The evening prayer service has begun in the church. It is a sound from the world you knew, but it's rich in you here, in your tomb. It's a thread, a lifeline thrown into your sea of silence. You crawl, fumbling in the dark, towards the source of the sound. Your hands find the angled, narrow opening of the squint. You press your face against the cold stone, peering through the slit, and you see it. A sliver of a different world, a world of light and order. You can see a single candle flickering on the main altar. You can see the back of a priest, a figure in white robes. You can hear the rise and fall of the familiar Latin, a language you have heard your entire life. It's a distorted, partial view, like looking at the world through a keyhole. But it's enough. It's an anchor. The word itself, anchoress, suddenly makes a new kind of sense. You are not just withdrawing. You are anchoring yourself to this, the church, the routine, the endless, unchanging cycle of prayer. The trembling in your body begins to subside. Your breathing deepens. The frantic bird in your chest settles. The first great wave of terror has crashed over you, and you are still here. You have not broken. You listen to the chanting until it fades, and the candle on the altar is extinguished. This silence returns. But this time, it's different. It's not a void. It's just quiet. The first silence was the silence of the grave. The second silence is the silence of the anchor hold. Your silence, your new home. You have survived the first hour. Now begins the slow, painstaking process of learning how to live here. The first night is a blur of shallow, fitful sleep, punctuated by moments of stark, wakeful terror, but you survive it. Then when the faint, grey light of morning begins to seep once more through your two small openings, a new resolve takes root. Panic is a luxury you cannot afford. This is your world now. You need to learn its geography. So you begin the process of mapping your kingdom. You get to your feet, your body stiff and sore from the cold stone floor. You stretch your arms out wide, and slowly, you begin to turn in a circle. Your fingertips brush against the four walls of your existence. Stone, cold, rough, and unyielding. You walk the perimeter, trailing your hand along the walls, learning every bump, every rough patch of mortar, every subtle shift in texture. This is the boundary of your life. For months, you count your steps. Perhaps it's 5 paces long, and 4 paces wide. A kingdom you can cross in seconds. You are becoming a creature of touch and sound, your other senses rendered almost useless. Your eyes, so accustomed to the vastness of the outside world, are now good for little more than distinguishing between deep shadow and slightly less deep shadow. But your skin is alive with information. You can feel the dampness in the air, the chill that radiates from the north wall where you stand as a spiritual guard. You run your hands over the floor. It's mostly coal, hard-packed earth or rough flagstones. But in one corner, there's a pile of straw. This is your bed. You sit on it, feeling the dry, rotten texture. It's not comfortable, but it's a designated space for rest. It's a landmark. Your exploration continues. You find the small, raised stone platform that is your altar. On it, a simple wooden cross has been left for you. You touch it, tracing the familiar shape. This is the heart of your kingdom, the focal point of your new life. You will spend countless hours kneeling before this, your body aching, your mind drifting. Near the altar, you find the hearth, a small, shallow pit lined with stone. There's a small stack of firewood next to it in the tinderbox. A fire will be a rare and precious thing, a source of heat and light in the crushing damp and dark. You know you must use it sparingly. The smoke would escape through a small, simple flue in the ceiling, a direct line to the sky you cannot see. This is your home, a bed of straw, a stone altar, and a fire pit. It's the barest, most elemental definition of a dwelling. It is a home stripped of all comfort, all sentiment, all distraction. It is a machine for praying in. And then there's the less holy furniture. In one corner, discreetly placed, is a simple clay pot with a wooden lid. You know what it's for. This is your chamber pot. This single, humble object represents one of the greatest challenges of your new life. A challenge the holy books and romantic stories conveniently forget to mention. The management of your own filth. We'll get to that. For now, you just note its location. It's another landmark in the dark. Your inventory is complete. You have mapped the physical space. Now you must map its features, its connections to the outside. You move to the squint, the holy window. You press your eye to it again. In the morning light, you can see more of the church interior, a section of the altar, a bit of tapestry on the wall, the base of a pillar. It's a frustratingly limited view, like being forced to read a book by looking at only one word on the page at a time. Yet, this will be your only visual entertainment for the next half-century. You will come to know every thread in that tapestry, every crack in that stone pillar, with an intimacy that is almost insane. Then you turn to the other window, the one in the outer wall, the food hatch. It's covered by a heavy wooden shutter on the inside, which you can open and close. You push it open a crack. The light that streams in is blindingly bright. You flinch, pulling back, after just one night in the dimments. The ordinary daylight is a physical assault. You let your eyes adjust slowly, blinking, and then you peer out. You see a patch of grass, a few tilted headstones in the churchyard, and the trunk of an old yew tree, thapsuit. That is your view of the world. You will watch the seasons change on this single patch of grass. You will see it grow green in the spring, get scorched brown in the summer, be covered with leaves in the autumn, and buried in snow in the winter. This small, unchanging rectangle is your calendar. There's a strange, and much debated, detail about this window found in the ANC Rene Wiss. It instructs the anchoress to have a curtain of 2 cloths, a black one with a white cross on it, covering the window at all times. You were not supposed to be able to see out, nor were others to see you. You were to be a disembodied voice. Some historians think this was a strict rule. Others believe it was more of an ideal, and that many anchoresses, in the crushing loneliness of their cells, would have spent hours just staring out at that little patch of green, hungry for any glimpse of the living world. The temptation to just watch a bird land on a tombstone would be immense. You close the shutter. The comforting dimness returns. You have completed your tour. You have paced the borders of your world and inspected its 2 gates. It is a pitifully small territory, but it is yours. You are the sole inhabitant, the queen of a 4-paced kingdom. The panic of the first night has been replaced by a grim, practical understanding. This is the space. This is the reality. Your life from now on will not be about grand gestures or soaring spirituality. It will be about the management of this tiny, dark, cold box. And your first task is to establish a routine, a rhythm that can make the endless succession of days, weeks, and years ahead not just endurable, but meaningful. Now that you've mapped your physical territory, you must learn the rhythm of its strange, two-way communication system. Your life is governed by 2 windows, 2 umbilical cords connecting your stone womb to the outside world. One nourishes the soul, the other sustains the body. Learning to navigate them is learning to survive. Your day begins with a squint, long before the sun is up. You are awake, kneeling on the cold floor, your eye pressed to the narrow slit in the wall. You are waiting for the first sign of life from the church. The faint glow of a sexton lighting the altar candles for matins. The pre-dawn prayer service. This is your clock. The rhythms of the church are now your rhythms. The 7 canonical hours, matins, lauds, prime, tertii, sextii, nones, vespers, and compline, are the new scaffolding upon which you will build your days. Through this small, angled hole, you experience the life of the church in fragments. You hear the priest's voice, but you cannot see his face. You hear the choir sing, but you see only a sliver of the stained glass window high above them. You smell the incense, a sweet, holy scent that drifts through the stone and perfumes your damp cell. It's a constant reminder that you are a part of something larger, yet fundamentally separate from it. You are a satellite in a fixed orbit around a world you can no longer enter. Receiving the Eucharist, the Holy Communion, is a masterclass in clumsy reverence. The priest, after consecrating the bread and wine, will bring a small piece of the wafer to your side of the wall. He cannot reach you, so he uses a special instrument, a long-handled spoon or a small, covered vessel on a rod, to pass the sacrament through the squint. You must lean in, your mouth open, a blind baby bird receiving sustenance from a source you can only partially perceive. It is both deeply intimate and profoundly alienating. The squint is your connection to the divine, to order, to the sacred calendar. The other window, the shuttered hatch to the churchyard, is your connection to the messy, profane, and essential business of staying alive. Twice a day, at appointed times, you will hear a soft knock on the outer wall. This is your servant. You have at least 1, maybe 2, maidstants whose entire job is to keep you alive. They live nearby, and their work is funded by the dowry or patronage you secured before your enclosure. You open the inner shutter a crack, and the exchange happens in a swift, practiced silence. A small basket is placed on the outer sill. In it, your day's food, a hunk of dark bread, a piece of cheese perhaps, a small bowl of pottage, a thick vegetable stew. It is simple, penitential food, enough to sustain life, but not enough to provide pleasure alongside it. A jug of water, a weak ale. You take the basket, and in its place, you leave the previous day's empty dishes and the other thing, the chamber pot. This is the most humbling moment of your day. You pass the vessel containing your own waste out to your servant, who will take it, empty it, clean it, and return it at the next appointed time. There is no eye contact. There are no words exchanged. But in this single, repeated action, your utter dependence on the outside world is made brutally clear. You may be a holy woman, a bride of Christ, but you are still a body. By body that produces waste. A body that needs to be fed and watered like a pinned animal. This window is also your post office. Through it, you receive news. Your servant will whisper gossip from the village. Who is married? Who has died? If the harvest is good. This trickle of information is your only link to the passage of human time. It's how you learn that the boy you remember playing in the lane is now a man. That the old woman who baked bread is now in the graveyard your window overlooks. There's a curious detail that many guides for anchoresses, like the serene with, emphasize. The anchoress must not become a gossip. The guide warns, do not, an anchoress, become a babbler of news or a teller of tales. It was a major concern that the anchor hold would become the medieval equivalent of a talk radio show, with the anchoress gathering and spreading rumors throughout the parish. This is why historians believe the rule of the double-layered curtain over the window was so important. It was to discourage idle chatter and keep the focus on holy counsel. But the temptation must have been immense. In the soul-crushing boredom of the cell, a juicy piece of gossip would be more nourishing than bread. And it's a point of academic speculation just how strictly this rule was followed. Were these cells silent places of prayer? Or were they actually humming with the secret histories and quiet scandals of the village, whispered through a small hole in the wall? So your life becomes a dance between these two windows. You turn to the squint for salvation, for the eternal, unchanging rhythm of the liturgy. You turn to the hatch for survival, for the profane, essential needs of your body and the fleeting news of a world you've abandoned. One window faces God, the other faces humanity. You are the pivot point between them. You learn to live in the space between the knock on the shutter and the sound of the evening chant. You learn to measure your existence in spoonfuls of pottage and fragments of psalms. This structured, predictable rhythm is what keeps the madness at bay. It is the framework that prevents the endless, undifferentiated hours from dissolving into a single, terrifying grey expanse. The two windows, one holy and one worldly, are the two poles of your tiny globe, and you spend your days, and your years, simply turning from one to the other. Let's talk about the pot. We've mentioned it. The humble clay chamber pot, sitting in the corner of your cell. It is the single most important and least romantic object in your new life. The holy texts, the bishop's registers, they all speak of prayer, of divine visions, of conquering temptation. They are conspicuously silent on the subject of sanitation. But for you, sealed in a tiny, unventilated stone room, this is not a trivial matter. It is a central, daily, and often disgusting challenge. Your cell has no plumbing. There is no drain. There is no running water. There is only a single pot. Everything your body produces must go into this pot. And this pot will share your tiny living space with you for hours at a time. Between the scheduled visits from your servant, you are the sole custodian of your own filth. The smell is the first thing you have to contend with. In the cold of winter, it might be manageable, but in the damp heat of summer, your cell, already stuffy and airless, will become thick with a foul, inescapable odor. It will cling to your clothes, to your hair, to the straw in your bed. It will be the constant, unholy incense of your confined existence, the romantic image of the serene anchoress, lost in beatific prayer. Conveniently omits the fact that she was likely praying in a room that smelled overwhelmingly of latrine. This is the great, unwritten reality of the body prison. You have chosen to trap yourself not just with your soul, but with your body's most mundane, unmessy functions. There is no escaping it. Then there is the practical management. You have to be careful. A clumsy move in the dark, a misplaced step, and you could tip it over. The thought of spilling the contents of your chamber pot onto the earthen floor of your tiny cell is a unique and horrifying domestic disaster. There is no simple way to clean it up. You have a limited supply of water. You have no cleaning tools beyond a rough cloth. It would mean living in an even more intense state of squalor for days. The smell and dampness seeping into everything. So you become meticulous, your movements precise and cautious, especially around that corner of the room. Historians have pieced together some of the practical solutions from architectural evidence and the occasional offhand remark in anchoritic texts. Some more luxurious cells, if you can call them that, had a slightly more advanced system. Instead of just a pot, there might be a small, stone-lined channel, a simple privy, built into the wall. It would lead to a pit dug on the outside of the cell. This was a significant upgrade. It meant the waste was at least removed from your immediate living space. But it also meant the pit had to be periodically dug out by your long-suffering servants. And the smell, while not inside the cell, would still linger perpetually just outside your wall. There's a fascinating ongoing debate among archaeologists and historians about these anchor-hole privies. Some surviving cells show clear evidence of them, while others have no such feature, suggesting the simple pot method was common. The debate centers on whether this was a regional difference, a sign of the anchoress's wealth and status, or a change in practice over time. It's a strange field of study, the archaeology of medieval toilets, but it speaks directly to the quality of life, or lack thereof, in these cells. Beyond the smell and the logistics, there is the deep, profound humility of it all. In the outside world, these things are private, hidden. Your most basic animal functions are a part of your daily transaction with another person. Your servant, the young woman who brings your food, is intimately aware of the state of your body. She is the one who carries away the evidence of your physical existence. Any illusion you might have of being a purely spiritual, ethereal being is shattered twice a day when you hand her that pot. This reality, as unpleasant as it is, becomes a tool for your spiritual practice. The Church Fathers wrote extensively about humility, about conquering the sin of pride. And what is more humbling than this? You are forced to confront, on a daily basis, the fact that you are not a disembodied soul. You are an animal, a creature of flesh and blood, subject to the same messy processes as any other. The smell becomes a penance. The careful, cautious movements become a form of mindfulness. The daily, humiliating handoff becomes a lesson in dependence and humility. You learn to live with the unholy problem. You learn to incorporate it into your spiritual landscape. The stench of your own body becomes a constant, pungent reminder that the flesh is corrupt, temporary, and something to be transcended. It is, in a very real and visceral way, the smell of your own mortality, trapped in a box with you, and in the strange, backward logic of asceticism. That is exactly the point. You wanted to escape the world to get closer to God, but in doing so, you have trapped yourself in the most inescapable and humbling reality of your own physical body. You are not entirely making this up as you go along. While your experience of confinement is unique to you, the path itself is a well-trodden one. You are part of an established tradition, and with that tradition comes a rulebook. Sometime in your first few weeks, your servant will pass a precious object through the food hatch, a book, or, more likely, a hand-copied manuscript. This is your guide, your instruction manual for how to be a proper anchoress. For many English anchoresses, this book was the anchoress, or the anchoress guide, written in the early 13th century by an unknown author. It is a detailed, practical, and sometimes surprisingly witty guide to the solitary life. It is not just a book of prayers. It is a complete lifestyle guide, covering everything from the structure of your prayers to the temptations of the devil and, yes, even advice on your cat. The manuscript itself is a treasure. In a world where books are rare and precious, Owning one is a sign of status. You are likely literate. Many anchoresses were, which was part of the appeal of this life for scholarly women. The ability to read, pray, and contemplate texts without distraction was a powerful draw. You run your hands over the smooth vellum pages, the careful, handwritten script. This book is now one of your most intimate companions. The anchoress divides the anchoritic life into an outer rule and an inner rule. The outer rule is about the body, your daily schedule, your diet, your clothing, your interactions with the outside world. The inner rule is about the soul, the governance of your thoughts, the cultivation of virtues, the battle against sin. The outer rule is surprisingly specific. It dictates your waking and sleeping hours, aligning them with the church's canonical hours. It prescribes your diet. You are to be a vegetarian, refraining from all meat and lard, except in cases of serious illness. Your meals should be simple, your fasting frequent. This wasn't just about piety, it was also practical. A simple, low-protein diet was believed to quell the passions of the flesh and was also, conveniently, cheaper and less likely to spoil. The guide gives you rules for your clothing. A simple habit of rough, undyed wool. It even tells you how you should sleep, fully dressed. In your habit, there is no disrobing, no comfort. You must always be ready for prayer, or for death. But the most fascinating parts of the outer rule are the social instructions. The book is obsessed with controlling your interactions through the two windows. It warns you sternly about the dangers of the parlor window, the food hutch. Do not preach to any man, it says. Your business is to be silent. It tells you to keep your face in the shadows, to never let anyone see you clearly. You are to be a voice, not a person. It warns against accepting gifts, against idle chatter, against becoming the village therapist. And then there's the oddest rule, the one we've touched on. The anchoress explicitly states, "You shall not possess any beast, my dear sisters, except only a cat." It goes on to explain that a cat is useful and doesn't require being taken for a walk. This is one of the most famous and debated lines in the text. Historians argue whether this was a universal rule or just a strong suggestion. It paints a wonderfully specific, and slightly comical, picture, a life of extreme ascetic devotion, with a single, officially sanctioned feline loophole. The inner rule, however, is the real meat of the book. It's a deep dive into medieval psychology. The author guides you through the five senses, explaining how each one is a gateway for temptation that you must now guard. Your eyes must not gaze out the window. Your ears must not listen to idle gossip. Your speech must be curtailed. Your sense of touch must be deadened to all but the cold stone and the rough wool. It gives you strategies for prayer, encouraging a form of meditation that involves vividly imagining scenes from the life of Christ. It's a way to fill the sensory void with holy images, to replace the input of the world with the input of Scripture. It also gives you a chillingly detailed bestiary of your own potential sins. Pride is a lion, envy is a serpent, wrath is a unicorn. The book teaches you to see your own thoughts as a menagerie of dangerous beasts that must be caged and tamed within the cell of your mind. The existence of this guide is a source of much scholarly discussion. Does a rule book for a life of spontaneous spiritual devotion undermine its authenticity? Some argue that it turns a mystical calling into a bureaucratic procedure, but others see it as unnecessary to love's survival. The anchoress is not just a set of rules. It's a psychological life valve. It provides structure in the face of boundless, terrifying freedom from structure. It gives you a language to understand your own mental state, a framework to prevent your mind from shattering under the immense pressure of solitude. As you sit in the dim light, tracing the words with your finger, you feel a sense of relief. You are not the first person to do this. You are not alone in your alliances. Others have walked this path, faced these fears, and this book is their map, passed down to you. It is a stern, demanding, and deeply weird guide. but it's a guide nonetheless. It tells you what to eat, what to wear, when to pray, and that your only friend can be a cat, for now. In the overwhelming silence of your cell, that's more than enough to cling to. The rulebook gives you the what. Now you must live the how. Then the how is prayer, unceasing, relentless, body and soul consuming prayer. Your new life is not one of quiet contemplation in the way you might imagine. It's not about sitting peacefully and thinking deep thoughts. It is a grueling, structured, and physically demanding job. The job is to pray. Your day is partitioned into the canonical hours, the 8 daily services that pace the life of the church next door. But you are not just a passive listener. You have your own work to do. For each of the hours, matins and lauds in the dead of night, prime at sunrise, trousseau, sexty, and nones through the day, vespers at sunset, and compline before bed, you have a corresponding set of your own prayers to recite. This is not a quick Our Father and you're done. This is a marathon. Your rulebook, or the custom of your diocese, lays it out. You will be reciting dozens of psalms, Paternosteris Our Fathers, and Ave Marias Hail Marys every single day. The numbers are staggering. Some anchoritic rules prescribe the recitation of the entire Psalter, all 150 psalms, on a weekly, or even daily, basis. You are essentially turning your cell into a perpetual prayer machine, a constant engine of devotion humming along next to the church. You don't need a clock. The bells of the church mark the time, calling you to your next shift. Before the sun is even a rumor, the bell for matins rings, and you are on your knees. In the crushing, tread on cold, you begin. Pater Noster, Kias and Caelus. The Latin words, familiar and rhythmic, become a kind of incantation, a way to focus your sleepy mind. You count the prayers on a string of beads, a rosary, your fingers growing numb as you work your way through the prescribed number. The sheer volume of this prayer is a point of fascination for historians. Was the goal spiritual enlightenment, or was it simply to fill the time? The answer, most likely, is both. The relentless cycle of prayer was a discipline, a way to keep the mind from wandering into dangerous territories of doubt, despair, or boredom. It was a holy occupation. You couldn't get lonely if you were constantly talking to God, Mary, and the entire host of saints. It was also a form of spiritual labor. You were not just praying for your own soul. You were praying for the souls of your patrons, for the village, for the entire world. You were a spiritual power plant, and your output was measured in psalms. This introduces a rather strange and little-known aspect of the anchoritic economy, the prayer for hire system. Your patrons, the wealthy benefactors who paid for your upkeep, didn't do it just out of charity. They were making an investment. They expected a return. And that return was prayer. You were, in a sense, their spiritual proxy, praying on their behalf while they were busy with worldly things like managing their estates and going to war. They believed your prayers, coming from a place of such extreme piety, were more effective, a direct line to God's ear. So while you are on your knees, chanting into the darkness, you are also, in a way, punching a celestial time clock. The physical toll of this routine is immense. Much of your day is spent kneeling. The stone floor is unforgiving. Your knees ache, then throb, then go numb. The damp cold seeps into your bones. You are not just praying with your mind. You are praying with your body. And your body is paying the price. Between the formal prayer services, there is your own private, devotional reading. You have your A and Serene wish, perhaps a Psalter, maybe even a book on the lives of the saints. You sit in the dim light that filters through the squint or the shuttered window, your eyes straining to make out the letters on the page. Reading is a slow, laborious process. Each word is savored, meditated upon. You move your lips as you read, a practice known as ruminatio, or rumination. You are not just reading the words, you are chewing on them, digesting them, making them a part of your own substance. And so your days take on a rigid, unvarying pattern. Kneel, pray, count, stand, stretch your aching limbs. Sit, read, whisper, kneel, pray, count again. The cycle is broken only by the soft knock of your servant at the window. The brief, humbling transaction of food and waste, and then it's back to work. The goal of this hunger of prayer is to starve your own will, your own ego. It's to replace your own thoughts with the words of the Psalms. It's to exhaust your body so your spirit can be more alert. At least, that's the theory. In practice, it's a battle against sleep, a battle against the searing pain in your joints, a battle against the sheer, mind-numbing monotony of repeating the same words, the same phrases, day after day, year after year. There are moments of transcendence, moments when the words seem to catch fire, when you feel a profound connection to the divine, a sense of peace that makes all the suffering worthwhile. But there are also long, dry stretches, hours and days when the prayers are just words, empty shells of sound in a cold, dark room. It is during these times that the real work is done. To continue praying when you feel nothing. To keep kneeling when your body screams in protest. That, according to your rule book, is the truest form of devotion. It's not about feeling good. It's about showing up for your shift. Your soul may be on a regimented diet of prayer, but your body has been put on a program of slow, systematic neglect. You have willingly entered a world without movement, and your body, a machine designed for it, begins to protest. Violently. The first thing you notice is the aching. It starts in your knees, a dull, persistent throb from the endless hours of kneeling on cold stone. It radiates up into your hips and down into your ankles. Then your back begins to complain. You are constantly hunched over your prayer book, peering through the squint, or simply curled up for warmth. Your spine, which evolved for walking upright across open plains, is now locked into a perpetual question mark. The muscles in your back scream, tightening into knots of solid pain. This is not the temporary soreness of a hard day's labor. This is the chronic, grinding pain of atrophy. Your muscles, deprived of the need to carry you through the world, begin to shrink. The strong legs that once carried you through fields and up hills soften and waste away. The arms that once carried buckets of water or bundles of firewood become thin and weak. You are a living experiment in muscular dystrophy. The cold is a constant enemy. Your cell, built of stone on the shaded north side of the church, is a natural refrigerator. The darkness is relentless, seeping up from the earth and through the porous stone walls. It gets into your clothes, your straw bed, your very bones. You develop a cough that never quite leaves. Your joints swell and stiffen, a condition we would now call arthritis. Every movement becomes a negotiation with pain. Simply standing up from your kneeling position is a slow, creaking, 10-second ordeal. Then there are the problems with your circulation. Without walking, running, or working, the blood in your body slows. Your feet and hands are perpetually, painfully cold, sometimes turning a mottled blue. You develop sores on your skin that are slow to heal. A small cut, which would have been a nuisance in your old life, can become a weeping, infected wound in the unhygienic environment of the cell. Historians and bioarchaeologists, when they have the rare opportunity to examine the skeletal remains of a presumed anchoress, can read the story of her confinement in her bones. They find evidence of severe arthritis, especially in the knees and spine. They see signs of vitamin D deficiency, osteomasolia, or soft bones, from the complete lack of sunlight. Your bones, without the stress of walking and the nourishment of the sun, are literally losing their density, becoming brittle and prone to fracture. A simple fall in your cell could result in a broken hip, a death sentence in this isolated world. And of course, there are the less spoken of, but equally debilitating, digestive issues. A diet of coarse bread and vegetables, combined with a complete lack of physical activity, is a recipe for chronic constipation and painful bloating. It's another humbling, unsaintly reality that your rulebook doesn't mention. Your body, in its rebellion, is reminding you at every turn of its messy, physical reality. You try to fight back, in small, pathetic ways. You might pace the tiny floor of your cell, 5 steps one way, 5 steps back, a caged animal in a zoo. You might do small stretches, trying to work the stiffness out of your joints. But it's a losing battle. Your environment is simply too restrictive. The anchoress actually offers some surprisingly practical, if slightly bizarre, advice on this. It suggests that if the anchoress is feeling unwell, she should let blood. Bloodletting was a common medical practice, believed to rebalance the body's humors. The guide suggests that the anchoress could have this done by her servant through the window, a messy and dangerous procedure at the best of times, and almost laughably risky in these conditions. It's a point of academic debate how often this actually occurred. Was this a genuine medical recommendation, or a symbolic one, suggesting that even a sickness should be turned into a form of penance? Your body, which you once took for granted, is now your primary antagonist. It is a constant source of pain, a constant distraction from your prayers. You came here to subdue the flesh, to treat it as an enemy. And now, it is fighting back. Every ache, every shiver, every pang of hunger is a testament to its rebellion. In a strange way, this becomes part of your spiritual work. You are tasked with enduring this slow, physical decay with grace. You offer up your pain as a prayer. The aching in your knees becomes a penance for your sins. The cold that settles in your bones is a small share in the suffering of Christ on the cross. You are turning your body's decay into a devotional act. But it's hard. There are nights when the pain is so bad you can't sleep, when you lie on your straw pallet and weep, not from spiritual angst, but from pure, physical misery. In these moments, the holy calling feels very far away. There is only the darkness, the cold, and the relentless, screaming protest of a body that was meant to move, but has been sentenced to a lifetime of stillness. It's a slow, agonizing process of your body turning against itself, a rebellion staged in a theater of stone. In your old life, you were self-sufficient, or at least part of a household that was. You could fetch your own water, mend your own clothes, bake your own bread. Now, you are as helpless as a newborn baby. Your survival depends entirely on the hands of your servants. You have at least one, and if your patronage is generous, two. They are usually women from the village. One might be older, a respectable widow, to handle the more public-facing tasks like buying your food at the market. The other might be a younger, stronger girl, for the heavy lifting, carrying water, chopping your firewood, and emptying that dreadful pot. They are your hands, your fate, and your voice in the world you have renounced. Your relationship with them is one of the strangest and most complex in this new life. It is a relationship of absolute dependence, yet it is conducted almost entirely through a small, shattered hole in a wall. You may never clearly see the face of the person who keeps you alive. You know them only by the sound of their knock, the shape of their hands as they place the basket on the sill, and the muffled sound of their voice. The anchoress is very clear about how this relationship should be managed. It advises you, the anchoress, to be stern and demanding, but fair. You are the mistress. They are the servants. You must not become too familiar. Friendship is a distraction. The anchoress's maid should be of a cheerful countenance, the guide says, but it also warns them to be plain, to avoid vanity, and to be silent and obedient. They are to be functional, almost invisible, extensions of your will. But the reality of human connection is always messier than a rulebook. Over the years, a bond, of sorts, will inevitably form. This woman, let's call her Elspeth, is your only regular human contact. She is the one who hears your voice every day. She is the one who knows if you are sick, because your pottage goes unison. She knows if you are sad, from the tone of your voice when you ask for more firewood. And you, in turn, learn the rhythms of her life through the tiny fragment she offers. You hear the weariness in her voice after a long winter. You might hear her humming a tune she learned at a village festival. Through her whispers at the window, you learn that her son has a cough, that her daughter is to be married, her life, full of the very worldly concerns you sought to escape, becomes a serialized story you follow, episode by episode, through a hole in the world. This complete dependence creates a subtle but profound power dynamic that historians love to debate. On the surface, you are the holy woman, the mistress of the soul. You have the spiritual authority, but in reality, Elspeth holds all the cards. Your life is in her hands. If she is lazy, your food might be late, or your water jug only half full. If she is careless, your chamber pot might not be cleaned properly. If she is malicious, a terrifying thought, she could poison your food, and no one would ever know. Your sanctity is utterly reliant on her reliability. There is a small, curious detail often found in the financial accounts of anchor holds, payments for the servant's shoes. It's a wonderfully mundane and grounding piece of information. While you are engaged in a timeless battle for your soul, your servant is literally wearing out her shoes, walking back and forth from the village, running your earthly errands. It's a reminder that your spiritual quest has a real, tangible cost, measured in leather and labor. Your servant is also your gatekeeper. When villagers come to seek your counsel, they must first approach your maid. She vets them. She decides if their problem is worthy of your time. She manages your schedule. In this, she wields a quiet power, acting as the secretary and bodyguard for a saint. The relationship is not always smooth. There must have been conflicts. Imagine the frustration. You are in deep prayer, and your servant is late with your meal, or she is noisy, chattering with someone just outside your window, shattering your precious silence. How do you reprimand someone you cannot see, someone on whom you are totally reliant? It requires a delicate touch, a careful negotiation across a stone wall, and you must trust her. You must trust that she is honest with the money you have allotted for your food. You must trust that the news she brings you is true. You must trust her with your life. Over the years, the formal relationship of mistress and servant might soften into something else. She is the keeper of your body, and in a way, you become the keeper of her soul. She might confess her own worries and sins to you, seeking your prayers. You are her employer, her spiritual advisor, and her secret confidant, all at once. You will likely outlive her. One day, the familiar knock will not come. A different voice will whisper through the shutter, a younger voice, Elspeth's daughter, perhaps, or another girl from the village, and you will have to begin the slow process of building this strange, intimate, remote relationship all over again, with a new set of hands, a new voice, a new lifeline to the world you abandoned but can never truly escape. It doesn't take long for them to start coming. At first, it's just a trickle. A curious child peering at the strange new structure on the side of the church. A bold teenager daring a friend to knock on your wall. But soon, the real visitors arrive. The villagers, your former neighbors. They come to your outer window, the one that faces the churchyard, not out of idle curiosity, but out of need. They are not supposed to see you. The curtain, the black cloth with the white cross, is meant to be your shield, preserving your anonymity and your mystique. They are supposed to speak to a shadow, to a disembodied voice of piety. You are no longer Agnes the weaver's daughter or John the farmer's widow. You are the anchoress. You have become a local institution, a spiritual utility, like the town well or the grinding mill, but for souls. A woman whose child is sick with a fever comes to your window. She stands outside, her hands twisting in her apron, and she whispers her fear into the darkness of your cell. Pray for him, Holy Mother, she begs. Ask the Virgin to spare him. A farmer whose crops are failing comes and asks you to pray for rain. A young man, tortured by guilt over a sin yet afraid to confess to the priest, whispers his secret to you, seeking your counsel. You have become a strange combination of a saint, a therapist, and a wishing well. Your primary function, in the eyes of the community, is to be a direct intercessor with God. They believe your life of extreme sacrifice, your constant prayer, has earned you a special influence in the court of heaven. Your prayers are worth more than theirs. They are purer, louder, more likely to be heard. So you listen. Use it on your side of the wall, in the cold and the dim, and you become a repository for the village's pain, its fear, and its hope. You offer them words of comfort, verses from the Psalms you now know by heart. You promise them your prayers, and when you are alone again, you fulfill that promise. You kneel at your stone altar and you add their burdens to your own. You pray for the sick child, the failed crops, the troubled soul. Your spiritual labor is no longer just for yourself or your patrons. It is for the entire community. This role as a public counselor is one of the great paradoxes of the anchoritic life. You chose this existence to escape the world, to find silence, and yet, the world, in all its messy, noisy need, follows you and beats a path to your door, or rather, your window. The ANC Renee Wiss is deeply ambivalent about this. It warns you, repeatedly, not to become a babbler. It instructs you to be a few words. The good anchoress, it says, is more a listener than a speaker. This is a point of ongoing scholarly debate. Were these women really meant to be silent oracles, or did the reality of their situation turn them into active counselors and advisors? The evidence suggests that many became incredibly influential. Their isolation gave their words weight. Their perceived holiness gave their advice an authority that even the parish priest might lack. You also become a keeper of secrets. The sins whispered through your window, the confessions of fear and anger, they stay with you, sealed in the cell as securely as you are. You are a vault of the village's collective conscience. It is a heavy burden to carry. And then there are the stranger requests. Someone might bring you an object, a small piece of cloth, a wooden token, and ask you to bless it, to keep it in your cell for a time so it can absorb some of your holiness. You become a conduit for sacred power, your very presence believed to sanctify the space around you. Not all your visitors are welcome. You might have to endure the taunts of drunks stumbling home from the tavern, or the cruel pranks of children. You are vulnerable, a fixed target. You cannot flee. You can only drop the shutter, retreat into the deeper darkness of your cell, and pray for them to go away. Over time, your reputation grows. If the sick child recovers, if the rains come, the villagers will give your prayers the credit. Your fame might even spread to neighboring villages. People will make pilgrimages, not to a grand shrine, but to a small, shuttered window in the side of a humble parish church, hoping to receive a word of wisdom or a blessing from the holy woman who lives inside. It is a strange, disembodying fame. They revere you, but they do not know you. They know the idea of you. You are a symbol of piety, a story they tell their children. You, the person, the woman with aching knees and a lonely heart, are slowly erased, replaced by the legend of the anchoress. And perhaps, in a way, that is the point. You came here to die to the world, and you have. The person you were is gone. In her place is a voice in the shadows, a holy echo, a vessel for the hopes and fears of others. You have become a public utility, and your work is to sit in the dark and listen to the endless, sorrowful, hopeful sound of the human heart beating just on the other side of your wall. The years begin to blur, marked not by events, but by the slow turning of the liturgical calendar. Advent, Christmas, Lent, Easter, the cycle repeats, over and over. You have found a rhythm in your confinement. The initial terror has subsided into a kind of dull, manageable reality. That the body, your rebellious companion, is always finding new ways to betray you. One winter, it begins. A tickle in your throat, a deep, chesty cough that rattles your whole frame, a fever that leaves you alternating between shivering fits of cold and slick, soaking sweats. In your old life, this would be a common misery. Something to be endured with hot broth and a warm bed. In the cell, it is a life-threatening crisis. You are completely alone. There is no one to soothe your forehead, to bring you a cup of water in the middle of the night, to add another log to the fire. You are trapped in the dark with your sickness, and it is terrifying. Your servant, Elspeth, knows something is wrong when she comes for the morning exchange. You are too weak to come to the window. You call out to her, your voice a hoarse croak. She hears the sickness in it. She might push extra firewood through the hatch, leave a simple herbal remedy she has concocted, but she cannot come in. The world is inviolable. The rules are absolute. You are to be cared for at a distance. You lie on your straw pallet, the raw fibers scratching at your feverish skin. The damp cold of the cell seems to seep into the very marrow of your bones, amplifying the illness. Your head throbs. The familiar shadows in your cell whisk into menacing shapes. The prayers you are supposed to be reciting feel like an impossible task. The words jumble in your mind. This is where the stark reality of the no exit policy hits home. What if this is it? What if this is the fever that will take you? You will die here, alone, on a pile of dirty straw. Your body might not be discovered for a day, maybe two, until your servant's unanswered knocks raise the alarm. It is a bleak, unceremonious end to a life of supposed holiness. Medical care for an anchoress was a subject of much debate. Even in the medieval period, the prevailing view was that sickness was a test from God, a form of penance to be endured with piety. The anchoress advises that in times of illness, the anchoress should be blithe of heart, happy for the chance to suffer for Christ. It's advice that is much easier to write than to follow when your teeth are chattering and you can barely breathe. Some historical records show that in extreme cases, a physician might be consulted. But this was a complicated affair. He would not be allowed to enter the cell. He would have to make his diagnosis by speaking to you through the window, perhaps by examining a flask of your urine passed out to him by your servant. It was a remote, almost comical form of medieval telemedicine. He might prescribe a change in diet or a herbal concoction, but his ability to help was profoundly limited. There was a more extreme and much disputed provision. Some bishops' registers include a clause that, in the event of a life-threatening emergency like a fire or a collapse of the building, the anchoress could be temporarily removed from her cell. But this was an absolute last resort, for a simple, albeit severe, illness. Unsinkable, you made your choice. You must now lie in the bed you made for yourself, or in this case, the straw bale. The days and nights merge into a delirious haze. You lose track of time. The church bells marking the canonical hours are a distant, meaningless climb. Your only reality is the pain in your chest, the fire in your skin, the oppressive, lonely darkness. In your fevered state, you might have visions. You might see the face of your mother, long dead, or the shimmering figure of a saint standing in the corner of your cell. Are these divine visitations a sign of God's favor in your moment of suffering, or are they simply the hallucinations of a feverish, isolated brain? You are too sick to tell the difference. But slowly, miraculously, the fever breaks. One morning, you wake up and the world is not swimming. You are drenched in sweat, but it is a cleansing sweat. The fire has gone out. You are weak, weaker than you have ever been. But you are alive. You drag yourself to the window for the morning exchange. Elspeth hears the change in your voice, the weakness replaced by a fragile clarity. A quiet prayer of thanks is likely whispered on her side of the wall. Recovering is a slow, arduous process. You have no rich broths or tender meats to build back your strength. You have only your usual meager fare of bread and pottage. It takes weeks to feel like yourself again, or rather, the person you have become. Your body is more frail than before. The cough lingers, and the memory of the ordeal is seared into your mind. The experience changes you. It strips away the last vestiges of romanticism about your calling. You have faced your own mortality, not in a symbolic, liturgical way, but in a raw, physical, and deeply lonely way. You have learned the terrifying truth of your situation. Your holiness is no shield against the simple, brutal realities of biology, and you have learned the incredible strength of the body's will to live, even when it is trapped in a cold, stone box. Your faith has been tested not by demons, but by germs, and somehow, you have endured. The sickness leaves an echo, not in your body, which slowly recovers its meager strength, but in your mind. The line between the world and your perception of it, already blurred by years of isolation and dim light, has become even more tenuous. The visions you had in your fever, they don't entirely go away. You begin to see things in the deep shadows, a flicker of movement in the corner of your eye, a face coalescing for a moment in the rough texture of the stone wall. You hear things in the silence between the church bells, a soft whisper that seems to be your name, a faint, ethereal music that has no discernible source. This is the great precipice of the solitary life, are these divine revelations, the showings that famous mystics like Julian of Norwich, perhaps the most famous anchoress of all, experienced. Is God finally pulling back the curtain and speaking to you directly? Or is this the beginning of madness? Is your mind, starved of stimulus and strained by hardship, finally starting to fracture? There is no way to know for sure. You have no one to ask. You can't describe your visions to Elspeth, your servant. She would either be terrified or spread a story through the village that you are a living saint, bringing even more unwanted attention to your window. You can't discuss it with the priest. He would likely suspect demonic influence. You are utterly alone with your altered perceptions. B.A. and Serene was, as always, both helpful and terrifying on this subject. It acknowledges the reality of visions, or showings, but it warns, with grim seriousness, that the devil is a master of disguise. He can appear as an angel of light. He can whisper scripture in your ear. His goal is to trick you, to fill you with pride, to make you believe you are special, chosen, so the book gives you a test. A true divine vision will always leave you with a feeling of deep humility and love for your fellow man. A demonic vision will leave you feeling proud, puffed up, and judgmental. It sounds like a simple enough litmus test, but in practice, it's a psychological minefield. You scrutinize your every emotion. You saw a shimmering light around your crucifix this morning. Did it make you feel humble and grateful? Or did it make you feel a secret thrill, a sense of being favored by God? You are forced to become a hyper-vigilant detective of your own soul, constantly cross-examining your own thoughts and feelings for signs of demonic influence. It's exhausting. This is a central tension that historians and theologians still grapple with when studying medieval mystics. Where is the line between profound spiritual experience and mental illness? From a modern, secular perspective, a woman sealed in a dark room for decades who starts seeing and hearing things seems like a textbook case of sensory deprivation-induced psychosis. But to dismiss it all as madness is to ignore the rich, complex, and often beautiful theological frameworks these women created to understand their experiences. Julian of Norwich's Revelations of Divine Love, a book she wrote or dictated from her cell, is a masterpiece of theology and a work of profound psychological insight. It was born from the very conditions that could also lead to insanity. Let's say one of your visions is particularly vivid. You are in that half-waking state just before dawn, and you see the figure of Christ on the cross, not as a wooden carving, but as a living, breathing man. You see the blood on his brow, the sorrow in his eyes, and you are filled with an overwhelming, gut-wrenching wave of love and compassion. It feels more real than your own aching knees, more real than the stone walls around you. When the vision fades, you are left trembling, weeping. You examine the after effects, just as your rulebook instructed. Do you feel proud? No. You feel small, humble, overwhelmed by the love you have just witnessed. According to the guide, this is the real deal, a true showing. But the doubt lingers. The mind is a tricky thing. Could you be fooling yourself? Could your own desperate need for meaning, for a sign that this incredible sacrifice has been worth it, be manufacturing these experiences? You have no external point of reference. Your entire reality is now subjective. The world is what you perceive it to be, and your perceptions are becoming increasingly strange. This is the ultimate danger of the anchor hold. It's not the cold, or the sickness, or even the loneliness. It's the risk of losing your grip on a shared reality, of drifting so far into your own inner world that you can no longer find your way back. You learn to live with the ambiguity. You treat the visions with a kind of cautious reverence. You don't boast about them. You don't cling to them. You hold them in your heart as a private source of comfort, a secret garden in the barren landscape of your soul. You record them, perhaps, making notes on a precious scrap of parchment, trying to capture the ineffable in clumsy words. Whether it is God speaking or your own mind unraveling becomes a question that loses its urgency. The experience is what matters. In the profound silence of your self-imposed prison, you have found a voice. Whether it is yours or another's is a mystery you may have to spend the rest of your life, and perhaps even the afterlife, trying to solve. After the fever, after the visions, after the long, terrifying slide along the edge of madness, you are granted a small, sanctioned mercy, a flicker of life in the stagnant air of your cell. It is time for you to receive your companion, your cat. The day it arrives is an event. Your servant, Elspeth, brings it to the window, not in a basket, but held in her arms. You open the shutter wider than usual, your heart thumping with a strange, childish excitement. She passes the small, worn, trembling creature through the opening. You take it into your hands. It's just a kitten, probably sorts from a nearby barn. A half-wild thing with wide, startled eyes. Its fur is soft, a revelation of texture after years of touching only cold stone, rough wool, and dry parchment. It mews, a tiny, pathetic sound that is shockingly loud in the profound silence of your cell. You hold it close, and it begins to purr. The vibration, the low, rumbling motor of contentment, travels through your hands and up your arms. It is the first truly comforting physical sensation you have felt in years. It is a feeling of simple, uncomplicated life, as we've discussed. The serene makes this one single exception to its strict no animals rule. This detail has charmed historians for centuries, a little flash of pragmatism and warmth in an otherwise austere and demanding text. But the reason for the cat wasn't primarily companionship. It was pest control. Your small hoard of food, the bread, the grain for your pottage, is a powerful lure for mice and rats. An infestation in your tiny, dark cell would be a nightmare. They would contaminate your food, spread disease, and their scrabbling sounds in the walls would be another layer of psychological torment. A cat was not a pet, it was a security guard. A living, purring mousetrap. But for you, it becomes so much more. The kitten quickly adapts to its new, small world. It explores every corner of the cell, its natural curiosity a stark contrast to your own weary resignation. It discovers the straw island, claims it as its own, kneading it with its tiny paws. It bats at a loose thread on your habit. It chases shadows in the dim light. It's playful. Pointless energy is a shocking injection of vitality into a space dedicated to stillness and death. You give it a name. A simple, quiet name, perhaps soot, for its dark fur, or pax, the Latin word for peace. Saying its name aloud feels strange. It is a word you speak not in prayer, but in affection. The cat becomes your silent confidant. You talk to it. In the long, empty hours, you find yourself whispering to the small, furry creature curled up on your lap. You tell it about the pain in your knees, about a memory of your childhood, about a passage you read in your psalter. The cat, of course, does not understand. It just blinks its slow green eyes at you and occasionally twitches an ear. But it doesn't need to understand. It just needs to listen. And in a world where you are only ever a listener for others, having your own audience, even a feline one, is a profound relief. It also becomes a living clock. Its rhythms are different from the church bells. It tells you things they cannot. The way it stretches after a long nap tells you that a significant amount of time has passed. Its sudden alertness, its head cocked to one side, might warn you of your servant's approach long before you hear her knock. There's a subtle but fascinating scholarly debate about the role of these anchorite cats. Were they truly common? Or is the ANC Rene Wiss's mention of them an anomaly? While direct archaeological evidence is almost impossible to find, cat bones are small and easily scattered. The overwhelming consensus is that the advice was practical and likely widely followed. A lone woman with a food supply in a medieval building would have been overrun by vermin without one. Your cat provides a lesson in living. It finds joy in the smallest things. A patch of faint sunlight to sleep in. The thrill of pouncing on an imaginary foe. It practices a kind of Zen mindfulness that you, with all your prayers and discipline, struggle to achieve. It exists, perfectly and completely, within the four walls of the cell. It does not pine for the outside world. It does not agonize over the state of its soul. It simply is. It is also a source of warmth in the depths of winter. When the fire is low and the cold is a physical pain, the small, furry body curled against you is a furnace of life. That simple, animal heat is a comfort that no prayer can provide. It is a reminder of the good, simple, creature-like aspects of existence that you have otherwise renounced. The cat is your companion in the darkness, your silent partner in the long vigil. It is a breach of the perfect solitude, a tiny, officially sanctioned flaw in the design of your prison, and you are deeply, profoundly grateful for it. It is a small, purring, living anchor, keeping you tethered to the simple, tangible world, preventing you from drifting away completely into the abstract realms of prayer and madness. Decades pass. You don't feel them pass in the way you used to. Time is no longer a river carrying you forward. It's more like a tide, rising and falling with the liturgical seasons, but never really going anywhere. The world outside your window, however, is not so still. It is changing, and you are piecing together its transformation through the fragmented, whispered news that comes through your food hatch. Your servant, Elspeth, is long gone, so is her daughter. You are now attended by her granddaughter, a young woman named Alice whom you've never seen, but whose voice you know intimately. Through the succession of these women, you track the passing of generations. They are your living calendar. Through their whispers, you construct a mosaic of history. You learn of wars, not as grand campaigns, but as a rise in the price of bread or the news that a local boy, the son of a man you once knew, will not be coming home. You hear of the king's new tax, not as a political decree, but as a complaint of hardship from the farmers who come to your window, seeking prayers for a better yield. You hear of plagues. A sickness sweeps through a distant town, and a wave of fear ripples through your own village. The number of visitors to your window increases. They bring you their terror, their desperate hope. You are an immobile lightning rod for the anxieties of a world in turmoil. You pray, you fast, you listen to the stories of loss, and then one day, the whispers of sickness fade, replaced by new worries. You piece together the changing face of your own village. A new mill has been built. The old wooden bridge has been replaced with one of stone. The lord of the manor has died, and his son, a man you remember only as a boisterous child, now rules. These small, local changes are, for you, as momentous as the rise and fall of empires. They are alterations to a map you can no longer see but must hold perfectly in your mind. It's a strange and disorienting way to experience history. You are both completely removed from it and intimately connected to its emotional fallout. You don't see the events, but you feel their consequences in the voices of the people who come to you. Historians who study the lives of long-term anchoresses are fascinated by this aspect of their existence. How did they perceive the world? Did their prolonged isolation give them a unique, philosophical perspective? Or did it simply make them misinformed and out of touch? There is no single answer, as it likely depended entirely on the individual woman and the quality of the information she received. Some, like Julian of Norwich, who lived through the Black Death and the Peasants' Revolt, seemed to have a profound grasp of the theological and social crises of their time. Others may have lived in a confused dream state, their understanding of the world a patchwork of gossip, rumor, and half-forgotten memories. You become a living archive, a keeper of the village's oral history. A young woman comes to you with a problem, and you remember her grandmother coming to you with a similar trouble 50 years ago. You see the patterns, the cycles of human joy and sorrow, repeating themselves over and over. You have seen entire lives unfold from your small, dark room. You have witnessed births, marriages, and deaths, unannounced to you through a hole in the wall. There is a strange, little-known account from the 14th century of an anchoress who was consulted by local authorities about an old property dispute. The written records were lost or unclear, but they believed she, having been in her cell for over 60 years, might be the only person alive who could remember the original boundaries of the land. She had become an accidental historian, her memory a more reliable record than faded parchment. Sometimes, the news from the outside world is baffling. You hear of new fashions, new technologies, new ideas that you can't quite picture. The world is moving on, developing a new language and new customs, while you are frozen in time. You are a relic from a previous age, a living museum piece. Your perception of your own past begins to warp. Was there really a time when you walked in an open field? Did you really feel the sun on your face? The memories are still there, but they feel less like your own experiences and more like stories you were once told. Your life before the cell is a dream you are slowly forgetting. Your only solid reality is the stone, the straw, the cross, and the cat purring on your lap. You have become a creature of pure observation and memory. You are a fixed point, a still center, while the world wheels and spins around you. You are no longer in history. Instead, history happens to you, in small, digestible, second-hand pieces. It is a strange, privileged, and profoundly lonely position to be in. You know everything, and you know nothing, all at once. With the passage of so many years, something strange begins to happen. Your reputation, once a local curiosity, has metastasized. It has grown beyond the village, beyond the county. Whispers of the Holy Woman of the North Wall have traveled along pilgrim routes and trade roads. You have, entirely against your will, become famous. This fame brings a new kind of visitor to your window, and with them, a new set of challenges. It's no longer just local villagers with their familiar, earthy problems. No, you have pilgrims, people who have traveled for days, sometimes weeks, to seek you out. They don't just want a prayer, they want an experience. They want to be in the presence of a living saint, to collect a story they can tell back home. They press their faces against the outer wall, straining to hear your voice. They leave offerings on your windowsill, a small coin, a loaf of fine bread, a piece of embroidery. Your servant, Earlis, diligently collects these. These gifts are a welcome supplement to your endowment, which may be shrinking with inflation over the decades. But they also make you uneasy. You are becoming a tourist attraction. The weight of this reputation is heavy. People expect you to be wise. They come to you with complex theological questions, with deep personal crises, expecting a profound, divinely inspired answer. And you're just a tired old woman in a box. You offer them what you can, the simple truths of the Psalms, the comfort of prayer, but you live in constant fear of saying the wrong thing, of your simple words being twisted into some grand prophecy. The pressure to perform holiness is immense. You have to be on all the time. You must always be the serene, pious oracle they expect you to be. Even on days when your joints are screaming and your heart is heavy, with a loneliness so profound it feels like a physical presence in the cell with you. Then come the truly strange requests. A woman might ask for a clipping of your hair, a thread from your habit, to be used as a holy relic. The belief in the power of relics was pervasive in the medieval world, and the body of a living saint, or someone perceived as one, was considered particularly potent. This is a fascinating and slightly ghoulish aspect of medieval piety. You are not even dead yet, and people are already trying to piece you out for souvenirs. You, of course, refuse these requests. Your rulebook is very clear on the sin of pride. To dispense parts of yourself as holy charms would be the ultimate act of spiritual arrogance. But the requests keep coming. This is a phenomenon historians of religion are deeply interested in. The tension between the institutional church and popular piety. The bishop sanctioned you to be a quiet recluse, a silent engine of prayer. But the people have turned you into something else. A folk saint, a grassroots spiritual celebrity. You're operating in a grey area, and your growing fame is likely making the local clergy a little nervous. You are a source of spiritual power that they don't entirely control. There is also a darker side to this fame. With admiration comes scrutiny and envy. Some might whisper that you are a fraud, that your piety is a performance. A rival priest in another parish might see your popularity as a threat to his own authority. You are a target now, not just for pranksters, but for those who would seek to discredit you. One of the most curious and little-known dangers was the enthusiastic follower. An account from the life of one anchoress tells of a devout but unstable woman who became obsessed. She would spend all day, every day, kneeling outside the cell, trying to imitate the anchoress's life, calling out to her constantly. It was a kind of holy stalking. The anchoress was trapped, unable to escape her most ardent fan. It's a chilling reminder that even in a locked stone cell, you are not safe from the unpredictable currents of human obsession. You learn to navigate this new reality with caution. You keep your answers brief and scriptural. You deflect praise. You instruct Tallis, your servant, to manage the flow of visitors, to send away those who seem unstable or whose requests are inappropriate. You are, in effect, managing your own brand, charting your own legend, all from the darkness of your cell. It is the final, and perhaps strangest, paradox of your life. You chose this path to achieve anonymity in the eyes of the world and find recognition only in the eyes of God. Instead, you have achieved the opposite. You feel increasingly anonymous and unseen by God, lost in the dry repetition of your prayers, while the world you renounce now sees you, or their idea of you, more clearly than ever. You have become a hollow icon, a famous stranger. Your name is known throughout the land, but your soul feels more lost and unknown than ever before. One day, Alice, your servant, comes to the window at an unscheduled time. Her knock is hesitant, but urgent. When you open the shutter, her whispered voice is tight with a mixture of fear and awe. "My lady," she says, "you have a visitor, a noble visitor, outside your window, flanked by two armed and impatient-looking men. He's a woman dressed in velvets and furs that are worth more than your entire village. It might be the local countess, or perhaps even a lady of the royal court passing through the region. Power has arrived at your doorstep." This was not an uncommon occurrence. The fame of certain anchoresses, particularly those known for their wisdom or prophetic gifts, attracted the attention of the elite. For a noble woman, visiting a renowned holy recluse was a complex act. It was partly a public display of piety, a way to demonstrate her spiritual credentials. It was also a quest for a unique kind of counsel. A priest or a bishop might be swayed by politics or ambition, but an anchoress, she was seen as being outside the system, introcapite, Her advice was believed to be pure, untainted by worldly concerns. So you find yourself, an old woman in a filthy wool habit, in conversation with one of the most powerful people in the land. The contrast is almost comical. She speaks to you through the same small hole as the dairymaid and the blacksmith. In the democracy of the anchor hold, everyone is just a voice on the other side of the wall. Her problems, however, are not the same. She doesn't ask for prayers for a sick cow. She speaks of court intrigue, of a faltering marriage arranged for political alliance, of her fears for her son's soul amidst the temptations of power. She is seeking spiritual guidance, but she is also, perhaps, looking for something else, a strategic advantage, a divine sanction for a political move. You have to be incredibly careful. Your words to a person like this carry immense weight. A simple phrase, a cryptic piece of advice, could be interpreted as a prophecy, and that prophecy could be used to justify and grab a broken treaty or a feud. You are navigating a minefield of medieval power politics from a position of absolute powerlessness. The most famous example of this, of course, is the relationship between the anchoress Julian of Norwich and Marjorie Kemp, an eccentric and controversial mystic. Marjorie, a deeply emotional and often disruptive figure, visited Julian to seek validation for her own visions and her unconventional spiritual path. The account of their meeting, recorded in the Book of Marjorie Kemp, is one of the most fascinating documents of the period. It shows Julian, the established, respected recluse, offering careful, compassionate, but theologically sound advice to the volatile younger woman. Julian was, in effect, acting as a spiritual regulator, a calming influence in a turbulent religious landscape. Historians continue to debate the nature of these elite visits. Were the nobles genuinely seeking spiritual wisdom, or were they using the anchoress as a pawn in their own games? It was likely a mixture of both. The belief in the anchoress's power was real, but so was the desire to harness that power for personal or political gain. Your noble visitor might ask you to pray for the king's health, or for victory in an upcoming battle. Your prayers are now being enlisted in the service of the state. It's a long way from praying for the village harvest. She might also try to become your patron, offering a large sum of money to the church in your name, a gesture that both honors you and publicly links her name to your sanctity. It's a transaction, an exchange of her wealth for your holiness. You listen patiently. You offer the same counsel you would offer anyone. Pray, be humble, trust in God's mercy. You avoid specifics. You speak in the universal language of the soul, not the particular dialect of the court. You are a mirror, reflecting her own anxieties back at her, framed by scripture. When she leaves, tossing a heavy coin to your servant Alice, the silence that descends on yourself feels different. The intrusion of such immense worldly power has left a strange residue. It's a reminder that even here, in your stone box, you cannot escape the hierarchies and ambitions of the world. They can reach you through the smallest of openings. The visit elevates your status even further. The news that the Countess came to your window spreads like wildfire. Your fame is now cemented, but the encounter also leaves you with a sense of profound weariness. You were a player, for a moment, in a game you despise. You long for the simple, honest problems of the villagers. You longed for the days when your greatest worry was a leak in the roof, not the fate of a dynasty. You turn from the world's window and face your small, stone altar. You have your cat, your cross, and your quiet. The great lady has her velvets, her power, and her troubles. For a brief moment, you would not trade places with her for anything in the world. The great lady in her velvets, the villagers with their worried faces, your own servant Alice. You know them all as voices, as presences on the other side of a wall. But what about your own face? Do you remember it? One day, the thought strikes you with the force of a physical blow. You are cleaning the small, pewter bowl your pottage came in. You polish it with a rough cloth, and for a fleeting moment, a distorted, dark shape swims across its curved surface. It is a vague, warped reflection of a human face. And you realize, with a jolt that makes your heart skip a beat, that you have not seen yourself in decades. There are no mirrors in your cell. Mirrors were luxury items, associated with vanity and frivolity, the absolute antithesis of the anchoritic life. Your only connection to your own appearance was severed the day the masons bricked up the door. You try to conjure an image of your face in your mind. You remember the young woman who walked into this cell. You remember her hair color. You think you remember the shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw. But the image is faded, like a worn tapestry. It's a ghost of a memory. The face you are trying to picture belongs to someone else. A person who ceased to exist 50 years ago. Who is the person on this side of the wall? What does she look like? You raise a hand to your own face, your fingers trembling slightly. Your skin, which you remember as smooth, is now a delicate, paper-thin web of wrinkles. It feels like touching a dried leaf. Your fingers trace the deep lines etched around your eyes and mouth, a roadmap of 50 years of squinting in the dim light and whispering prayers. You feel your jaw. The firm line you remember is gone, replaced by the soft, sagging skin of old age. You touch your mouth and are startled by the gaps where teeth used to be. Your hair, when you pull a strand of it before your eyes, is a shocking, spectral white. You are a stranger to yourself. Your own body, your own face, has aged and transformed in the darkness, and you were not there to witness it. You have been living inside this vessel, feeling its aches and pains, but you have no idea what it looks like from the outside. This experience, this loss of one's own reflection, is a unique and disorienting aspect of the anchoress's life that is rarely discussed. In a world obsessed with identity, the idea of not knowing your own face is profoundly unsettling. Historians and psychologists can only speculate on the mental effects of such a prolonged state of unself-awareness. Did it lead to a sense of ego loss, a true dissolution of the self that was the goal of their spiritual practice? Or did it create a different kind of anxiety, a feeling of being disembodied, a ghost in one's own skin? There's a subtle debate in the interpretation of the ANC Rene Wiss. The text is obsessed with controlling the anchoress's gaze, directing it inward and toward God. The prohibition of mirrors is a part of this. The goal was to stop the anchoress from seeing herself as the world sees her, as a physical object, and to encourage her to see herself as God sees her, as a soul. The question is, does this actually work, or does it simply replace one form of self-consciousness with another? You try to reconcile the young woman you remember with the old woman your fingers are telling you that you are. The disconnect is dizzying. It feels as though your soul is inhabiting a foreign body, a rented costume that has been worn and weathered without your consent. This moment of discovery changes your relationship with your own body yet again. It is not just a source of pain or a rebellious enemy anymore. It is now a mystery, a secret history written in a language of wrinkles and aches that you are only just beginning to decipher. You think about the visitors to your window. They see you, or rather, they see the shadowed form behind the curtain. They have an image of you in their minds, the image of the holy anchoress. It is almost certainly a picture of serene, timeless piety. They do not picture this. A frail, toothless old woman with brittle bones and skin like parchment. The face you have lost is replaced by 1,000 different imaginary faces in the minds of others. You let the pewter bowl rest in your lap. The distorted reflection is gone. It doesn't matter. The face in the bowl. The face in your memory. The faces in the villagers' minds. None of them are the real you. The real you is this. A consciousness. A soul. A presence that has been stripped of almost every external identifier, including your own reflection. In a strange way, the realization is liberating. You have shed your face like a snake sheds its skin. You are no longer defined by your appearance, by your age, by how the world sees you. You are defined only by your existence within these four walls. It is a terrifying and radical form of freedom. You have become truly, completely, Anonymous. Your body has become a chronicle of your confinement, a living document written in a language of decay. The earlier aches and pains have now settled into a permanent state of being. You no longer remember what it feels like to live without the dull, grinding throb in your joints. But new, more profound changes are taking place. The slow rebellion has become a quiet, systematic collapse. Your bones, starved of sunlight for more than half a century, have grown fragile and porous. You know this because you hear them. Sometimes, when you move, there is a faint, dry crackling sound from your own skeleton, like twigs snapping underfoot. You live in constant, low-level fear of a fall. A simple misstep in the dark could lead to a fracture, and a fracture, in this place, would be the beginning of the end. There is no setting a bone here, no recovery. Just a slow, agonizing decline. Your muscles have wasted away to almost nothing. Your legs, which once carried you everywhere, are now thin, weak appendages that tremble with the effort of holding your weight. When you stand, you must use them all for support. The 5-paced journey across your cell is now a significant and precarious undertaking. Your world, already microscopic, shrinks even further. The floor becomes a treacherous landscape. You spend more and more of your time sitting, or lying on your straw pallet. The world outside your body reduced to the sounds that filter through the walls and the needs of your cat, who is now the 3rd or 4th descendant of the original. A new life in the same ancient role. Your senses, once your only lifeline, are beginning to fail you. Your hearing, so attuned to the whispers and distant chants, is now muffled. You have to ask Alice to speak up at the window, her voice struggling to pierce the new fog in your ears. Your eyesight is even worse. The years of straining to read in the dim light have taken their toll. The letters on the vellum pages of your psalter now blur together, a meaningless scroll of black marks. The one joy and intellectual solace you had is being stolen from you. You can no longer read the words of God. You can only remember them. Your prayers are now entirely a work of memory, reciting the Psalms you learned it by heart so long ago. The squint into the church reveals only a fuzzy, indistinct glow. You can no longer see the candle on the altar. You can only sense its light. This slow decay is the final, logical endpoint of the anchoritic ideal. The body prison was designed to subdue the flesh, and it has worked. It has worked. Perhaps too well. You have successfully ground your physical self into a state of mere oblivion. Bioarchaeologists who have studied the skeletal remains of those believed to be medieval recluses often find evidence of a shockingly hard life. Beyond the arthritis and vitamin deficiencies, they sometimes find evidence of healed and unhealed fractures, severe dental decay leading to abscesses and to floss, and other markers of chronic illness and malnutrition. These bones are a testament to an endurance that is almost beyond modern comprehension. They are the physical proof of a life spent systematically dismantling the body in the service of the soul. There's a quiet, ongoing discussion among historians about the average lifespan of an anchoress. It's a difficult thing to study, as records are sparse, but the surprising conclusion is that many of them lived for a very, very long time. Some accounts suggest women living in their cells for 50, 60, or even more years is a baffling paradox. In an era when life expectancy was short, how did these women, living in such unhygienic and physically debilitating conditions, survive for so long? Some scholars suggest their isolation protected them from the plagues and epidemics that periodically swept through the general population. Others argue that their simple, vegetarian diet was healthier than that of their contemporaries. And some believe that the very structure and purpose of their lives, the deep sense of meaning and routine, gave them a psychological resilience that translated into physical longevity. You were not just wasting away, you were wasting away for God. And that, it seems, can keep a person going for a surprisingly long time. You feel this resilience in yourself. Your body is a wreck. It is a painful, unreliable, and slowly failing machine. But your spirit, Your will endures. You are still here. You had outlived your siblings, your friends, the priests who served the church, and generations of your own servants. You are still silent monument in a world that is constantly being born and dying all around you. Your days are simpler now, less prayer. Perhaps it is too painful to kneel for long, too hard to concentrate through the fog of age. Your existence has been distilled to its very essence. Breathing, waking, sleeping, listening, waiting. You have become a creature of pure being. The slow decay of your body has, in a way, achieved the goal you set out to accomplish all those years ago. It has burned away everything that was non-essential. All that is left is the still, quiet, flickering flame of your consciousness, housed in the crumbling ruin of your own body. The voice at the window changes again. You have lost count of how many times this has happened. Alice, who was once the young girl, grew into a middle-aged woman, and then an old one. Her whispers grew frail, her steps slower, and then one day, she was gone. Now, there is a new voice. It is young, hesitant, a little frightened of the unseen, ancient creature she is tasked to serve. She is perhaps your first servant's great-great-granddaughter. The thread of your connection to the world is now spun by a girl who is a complete stranger to the stories and people of your own time. You have to teach her the routine. It is a task that fills you with a bone-deep weariness. You have to explain, in your thin, reedy voice, the exact time for the morning exchange. You have to remind her to bring extra firewood when she feels the north wind blowing. You have to teach her how to listen, how to handle the quiet dignity of the transactions at the window. This process highlights your own extreme old age more than anything else. You are now the teacher, the repository of a tradition that only you and a handful of other recluses still understand. You are explaining the rules of a world that has largely vanished. The young girl, let's call her Rose, is a product of a different time. The world has changed in ways you can barely comprehend from the whispers you overhear. She is less deferential than her ancestors, perhaps a little more impatient. The deep, instinctual piety that animated your world has begun to fade, replaced by a more practical, secular view of things. To her, you are not so much a living saint as a strange, impossibly old woman for whom she has a peculiar and slightly inconvenient job. The conversations at the window become a dialogue across centuries. She tells you of things that sound like fables, new kinds of cloth, new songs, new ways of building. You, in turn, are a primary source for a history she cannot imagine. You might mention a name, a priest, a lord, a merchant, and she will have no idea who you are talking about. That person is dust now, their name forgotten by all but you. This moment, the training of a new servant by an ancient anchoress, is a detail often overlooked, but it is a poignant one. It represents the transfer of institutional knowledge. The anchor hold is not just a cell. It is an office, a role, and its operational procedures must be passed on. Historians who study the long-term administration of these cells note that the continuity of service was crucial. The entire system depended on this chain of care being passed from one generation to the next. The debate lies in how formal this training was. Was it a set of verbal instructions, as we're imagining now, or was it simply learned by observation over many years? The relationship is different from the ones you had before. With Elspeth, so long ago, there was a shared world, a common set of memories. With this new girl, Rose, there is only a vast, empty gulf of time. You are an artifact. She is your curator. There is a new kind of loneliness in this. Be sure, you were lonely for the world you had lost. No, you are lonely for the past. You are the last speaker of a dead language. You find yourself becoming more patient, more gentle than the ANC Renee Wyss would advise. You are not the stern mistress of the cell anymore. You are a fragile old woman who depends on this young girl for everything. For your food, for your warmth, for the cleaning of your chamber pot. Your survival is in the hands of a child who sees you as a ghost. You ask her questions, not just about the news of the village, but about her life. What does she like to do? What does she dream of? You are hungry for the details of a normal life. A life you have not known for longer than she has been alive. You are trying to understand the world she lives in. A world that will continue long after you are gone. Sometimes, a flicker of true connection happens. She might tell you of a sorrow, a fear of her own, a sick mother, a faithless sweetheart. And in that moment, the centuries between you collapse. The problem is the same. The pain is the same. You offer her the same advice you have offered for 70 years. You give her a prayer, a word of comfort, and in her grateful whisper, you hear the echo of her grandmother, and her grandmother before her. You realize that while the world changes, the human heart does not. But mostly, the interactions are functional, tinged with the strangeness of your situation. You are a voice in the wall. She is a pair of hands. You are teaching her how to care for a relic. She is learning how to tend to a ghost. And together, you maintain the quiet, steady rhythm of your final years. A partnership of youth and antiquity, enacted across the threshold of a small, dark window. There comes a morning when you do not rise. It's not a decision. It's simply a fact. The will to move. The faint spark that has driven you from straw to stone and back again for so many decades has finally been extinguished. A different kind of stillness, a cold that has nothing to do with the damp north wall, is settling deep within you. You lie on your pallet. You're breathing a shallow, wispy thing. Your cat, sensing a profound change, has curled itself into a tight, warm ball against your chest. Its purr is a low, steady vibration, a signal, living rhythm against your own failing one. Your mind, which has been your tormentor and your sanctuary, begins to drift. The walls of the cell seem to become transparent. You are not in the dark stone box anymore. You are in the field of your last sunset, the long grass tickling your skin. You are in the church of your living funeral, the scent of holy oil thick in the air. You are a young girl, listening to your mother sing. The memories are no longer things you recall. They are places you inhabit. Time has collapsed completely. The bell for matins rings in the church next door. You'll hear it, but it sounds very far away, as if coming from across a wide, Contemplate. For the first time in over 70 years, you do not kneel. You do not begin to pray. The work is done. The long, grueling shift of your life is finally coming to an end. You think of the prayers, the thousands upon thousands of psalms and paternoster you have recited. Have they worked? Have they been heard? You feel no grand sense of spiritual victory, no final, glorious vision. There is no choir of angels. There is only a profound and welcome silence in your own mind. The ceaseless engine of prayer and penance has, at last, ground to a halt. This moment, the death of an anchoress, is a subject of quiet speculation for historians. There are no first-hand accounts. For obvious reasons, we can only piece it together from the outside. What happened when the voice in the wall fell silent? Your last prayer is not a prayer of words. It is a prayer of letting go. You release your hold on your own body, on the cell, on the world. You feel a sense of immense, unburdening lightness. The weight of your own life, a life of such deliberate, heavy stillness, is finally lifted. You hear the familiar, hesitant knock on the window. It is Rose, your young servant. With your morning meal, you do not have the strength to answer. She knocks again, louder this time. My lady. Her voice calls out, thin and worried. Silence. She will wait. She will come back at the midday exchange. She will knock again. The silence that greets her will be heavier, more final. The alarm will be raised. She will go to the parish priest, her face pale with a mixture of fear and importance. The anchoress, she will say. She doesn't answer. The priest will come. The village will gather. They will stand outside your window, the same way they did on the day you were enclosed. their faces upturned and anxious. They will call your name. The only answer will be the sound of the wind sighing around the corner of the church. There is a protocol for this. The bishop must be notified. Permission must be granted to unseal the cell. It is the bookend to the ceremony that began your life here. The masons must be summoned once more, not to build a wall, but to break one down. You are not aware of any of this. You are drifting in a place beyond time and stone. Your last conscious thought might be of your cat, its small, warm way to final, comforting anchor, or it might be of nothing at all, just a gentle, quiet fading, like a candle, after a long burning, finally flickering out. The last breath leaves your body. It is a small, insignificant puff of air in the profound silence of the cell where you have lived for so long. A new, absolute silence descends, the silence of a space that is no longer an anchor hole, but is now, truly and finally, a tomb. The sound that breaks the final silence is the sharp, jarring clang of a hammer against a chisel. It is the sound of the world breaking back in. After days of waiting for the bishop's permission, the masons have returned. They stand before the wall that was once your door, their faces grim and businesslike. This is the other half of their job. They work methodically, chipping away at the mortar they themselves laid so long ago. A crowd has gathered, just as they did for your enclosure, but the mood is different. The morbid curiosity of that day is replaced with a kind of reverent awe. They are here to witness the revealing of a mystery. For generations, you have been a voice, a legend. Now, they will finally see the face of the holy woman. The first stone is loosened and pulled free. A sliver of daylight, harsh and alien, pierces the sacred darkness of the cell for the first time in over 70 years. It illuminates a cloud of dust motes, dancing in the still air, with each stone removed. The opening grows, and the story of your life, written in the language of dust and decay, is revealed. The priest is the first to look inside. The crowd behind him falls silent, craning their necks to see. What they see is not the serene, beatific saint of their imagination. They see the stark, unvarnished reality of your life. The cell is small, smaller than they could have imagined, but as clean, in its own way, the result of your last servant's diligent care. But it is a space of profound austerity. They see the simple stone altar, the worn wooden cross. They see the pile of straw, flattened and molded by the shape of your body over countless nights. They see the empty water jug, the unread book with its faded vellum pages. And they see you. You are lying on the straw, a small, bird-like figure in a threadbare wool habit. Your skin is as pale and thin as parchment, stretched tight over a delicate framework of bones. Your face is calm, serene in a way it never was in life, free at last from the burdens of pain and prayer. You are impossibly ancient, a relic from a forgotten time. There is a moment of stunned silence. This is not the glorious image of a saint they had pictured. This is something far more powerful and far more human. It is the physical evidence of a life of almost unimaginable sacrifice. Gently, the priest and another man enter the cell. They move with reverence, careful not to disturb the scene. As they approach your body, a small, furry creature, your cat, lifts its head from your chest. It blinks in the sudden, shocking light, hisses at the intruders, and then, with a flick of its tail, it darts past them and out through the newly opened doorway. A final, living piece of your story escaping into the world. Your body is carefully lifted. It is feather-light, almost insubstantial. They carry you out of the cell and into the daylight. For the first time in a lifetime, you are back in the world. The sunlight you renounced falls upon your closed eyelids. The wind you longed for stirs the thin, white strands of your hair. Your story, however, is not quite over. The discovery of an anchoress's body was a significant event. The question on everyone's mind, particularly the priest's, is whether your body is incorrupt, The belief was that the bodies of the greatest saints did not decay, that they remained sweet-smelling and lifelike as a sign of their holiness. Historians view this phenomenon as a combination of wishful thinking, pious exaggeration, and occasionally, natural processes of mummification in certain conditions. Whether your body shows any such signs will be a matter of intense local debate and will seal your posthumous reputation. But for now, you are prepared for your second and final funeral. You are laid to rest, not in the common churchyard, but in the most honored place possible, inside the church itself, perhaps even interred within the floor of your own cell. The small stone box that was your prison in life now becomes your official, consecrated tomb in death. The masons are called one last time. They wall up the doorway again, permanently. The squint into the church is filled in. The small window to the outside is bricked over, silencing the whispers of the world forever. The sound is sealed, complete, a small stone exclamation point on the long sentence of your life. The villagers will tell stories about you for generations. The legend of the Holy Woman of the North Wall will become a part of the town's folklore, but they will never truly know the reality. They will not know the crushing loneliness, the pain in your bones, the daily battle against despair and boredom, the simple, profound comfort of a cat's purr. They know the story, but you were the one who had to live it. A life spent in a box, searching for a freedom that could only be found when the final stone was sealed. And now, the story is told. The final stone is in place, and a great and peaceful silence has fallen over our time together. The world of the anchoress, with its cold stones and its whispered prayers, begins to fade, like a dream upon waking. You can feel it dissolving, drifting away on the quiet currents of the night, leaving behind only a sense of deep calm. There is nothing more to know, nothing more to do. You are simply here, floating in this gentle, quiet space, safe and sound. The journey is over. All that is left is to rest. Your own breathing is slow and steady now, a soft, rhythmic tide pulling you further and further into stillness. You can feel the weight of your body, a pleasant, comforting heaviness, as you sink down into the soft support beneath you. The world outside your room, with all its noise and all its cares, seems very, very far away. It cannot touch you here, in this peaceful harbor. You are drifting now, on a quiet, dark sea, under a sky with no stars. Just a gentle, velvety blackness. And my voice will begin to fade as well, becoming just another part of the quiet, a gentle whisper that dissolves into the silence, guiding you softly into the deep and restful peace of your own slumber. Our journey together tonight ends here, in this quiet place. Should you need another tale to accompany you further into rest, my library of stories is always open for you. May your dreams be kind. Good night.